Scientists increasingly worry that the polar bear will not survive. Robert Irving is a senior vice president at Defenders of Wildlife, an environmental group.
The predictions are that if we continue on the path we are with greenhouse gas pollution, that polar bears in Alaska will disappear in less than 50 years. And that is a sobering thought.
Irving was referring to the latest study on polar bears released by the U.S. Geological Survey. It says polar bears can be safe if greenhouse gas emissions are cut. There are an estimated 22,000 polar bears worldwide. They can swim great distances and live for short periods on land, but their habitat, Arctic sea ice, is rapidly melting.
They hunt for their food out on the Arctic sea ice. They raise their young out on the Arctic sea ice.
Other studies show that polar bears have alarming levels of toxic substances in their bodies. Those chemicals are mostly used in agriculture. They run off into rivers and then into oceans, where they enter currents that end up in the Arctic ecosystem. Doug Inkley is a senior scientist with the National Wildlife Federation.
Unfortunately, PCB levels have been found to be quite high in polar bears. There have been at least 7 polar bears in the Norway region that were reported to have genitalia of both the male and the female, and this may indeed be because of the pollution.
In the past few weeks, the U.S. government has acted on several measures affecting the polar bear. The Environmental Protection Agency announced it will regulate greenhouse gas emissions in an attempt to curb global warming. Then the Interior Department designated almost 500,000 square kilometers in the Arctic Sea and coastal areas as critical habitat. Third, the administration decided not to change the polar bear's designation from threatened to endangered. Environmentalists say the administration responded to pressure from lobbyists. The change would have allowed greater protection of polar bears and their environment. As a result, the oil and gas industries could begin exploring new areas in the Arctic Sea by mid-2011. Richard Ranger is Senior Policy Advisor at the American Petroleum Institute. It represents the U.S. oil and natural gas industry.
Many people, not just in our industry, but in government, notably the U.S. Geologic Survey, believe that there's high potential for significant amounts of oil or natural gas to be found in the U.S. Arctic continental shelf, meaning below the seafloor.
Environmentalists say an oil spill in the Arctic, like the one earlier this year in the Gulf of Mexico, would spell disaster not only for polar bears, but for whales, seals, and other wildlife. They say this region, frozen and dark 6 months of the year, has little or no emergency response equipment. But Ranger says the oil and gas industries have been operating in the Arctic for over 40 years. He says the industry has collaborated on studies about polar bears to avoid harming them.
We have drilled safely in that environment over a period of a number of years and believe we can do so to the satisfaction of government, to the satisfaction of the public, and for the protection of the environment up there.
But environmentalists say one of the last great places on Earth should not be put at risk.
When polar bears are healthy, it tells us that the environment is healthy. So when we protect polar bears, we're actually protecting ourselves.
Environmentalists say if the polar bear is not safe, other species will be next to meet the same fate. Zulima Palacio, VOA News.